The story of Miss Pac-Man has everything. It has intrigue, romance. It even has lawsuits. Oh boy, does it have lawsuits. And it all culminates in the murder of one of video games' most iconic characters. Tonight, we are going to discuss that and how AtGames killed Miss Pac-Man. So let's get into it. All right, before we get started, I want to say hello to everyone in the chat who is joining us this Valentine's Day weekend for another Saturday night live stream. And right out of the gate, we have Mike Hawkhurts. Thanks for joining us tonight. And of course, a hat tip to Big B Kirby for joining us tonight. We have Console Kits, the Cornercade. We have Jim the Pacers fan who's wishing everybody a good weekend. And of course, moderator extraordinaire, the master of all moderation, Jason Little Alien. We have Goofy Foot, who was surprised to hear that Miss Pac-Man is dead. Meatball Saucy, who has confirmed the successful hit on Miss Pac-Man. We have R Burger. We have Gamer Fridge, who is very interested in this. We have Brooklyn Menace dropping by to give us a cheers. Hello, Brooklyn. Thanks for joining us. We have Officially Unofficial, who can't wait to hear the news. We have Steve Sale. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have Dr. Torque, who is ready to hear more. And let's see, anybody else coming in late? We have Pimp Star 2, who says yo, 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 and Gramps Arcade. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I know it is Valentine's Day weekend. You've probably got a whole weekend of romance filling the air for you and your ladies. But tonight we're going to talk about arcade's most famous lady. Of course, we're talking about Miss Pac-Man. And Real Zim has stopped by. Thanks for joining us tonight, Zim. And so let's just get right into it, because when I first heard this story, I was really intrigued by it. I couldn't get enough. I started digging in more and more, and I just wanted to know everything there was to know about what went down with AtGames and Miss Pac-Man. But to understand this, we have to go back to the beginning, back to those arcades in the 80s and the fire and the hype that was Pac-Man. Of course, released by Midway in the United States, Pac-Man quickly became one of the most popular and iconic video games of all time. In fact, it's so iconic, Arcade 1-Ups released like 100 different versions of this thing, and they continue to release 100 different versions. But this thing was hugely popular. At the same time, you have two brothers, or not two brothers, but two roommates or friends at MIT who are getting together and hacking arcade games. And their first foray into the arcade space is a hack for Atari's Missile Command. And it labeled Super Missile Command. The hack of this game added all kinds of features and everything else and became popular. They would release it in arcades, actually put it out. You pay quarters and play it. It was a real arcade game, but it landed these guys, Doug McRae and Kevin Curran, in a lawsuit with Atari. While that lawsuit was going on, GCC, the company these two founded in their dorm, continued to hack and develop other games. And one of those games was Crazy Otto, a hack of Pac-Man. These guys saw the potential of taking Pac-Man to the next level. Not only did they improve gameplay, adding levels, making Pac-Man faster, making the characters faster, but they added cutscenes and a story around it. But while they're doing this, the lawsuit with Atari continues, and it ends up finally settling. And in part of that settlement, GCC agrees that they will no longer market or distribute arcade games in which they do not have the permission of the license holder, the owner of the IP. So GCC goes to Midway, again, the US distributor of Pac Man, and shows them Crazy Otto and says, hey, we want to work with you to release this. And Midway is all over it. Midway loves what they've done with it and decides to work with GCC. Their initial work leads to Super Pac-Man, a version of Pac-Man that would have superhero vibes. Of course, not the Super Pac-Man we know today, because that Super Pac-Man was not long lived. The head of Midway noticed that Pac-Man had become the number one arcade for female gamers, more popular with women than any other arcade game. And alas, Pac-Woman was born. He identified in the story of Super Pac-Man created by GCC a female character. He identified with that and wanted them to make it the protagonist. The name Pac-Woman would not last very long. They would go back and forth with different names, from Mrs. Pac-Man to all different kinds of things, ultimately landing on Ms. Pac-Man. So together, GCC Technologies and Midway work and get the license for Miss Pac-Man to Namco. So at this point, Namco is licensing the character Miss Pac-Man, and Midway and Namco end up releasing the Miss Pac-Man game. Of course, this is the Miss Pac-Man we all know and love. And now GCC is making all kinds of money off this, as you know. And Namco and Midway are paying royalties into GCC. And this becomes one of the biggest, most popular, most iconic games and characters of all time. The licensing rights gave Midway, uh, you know, licenses to sell merchandise, from stuffed animals, the games, shirts, you name it, everything. And they would continue paying them royalties throughout the early years of the release of Miss Pac-Man. But as with GCC, as you'll see, they love to end up in court, because when you're born of hacking and violating IP, you tend to probably play a lot of other things fast and loose. In fact, the sordid history of GCC, you see numerous lawsuits from Atari, follow-up lawsuits from Atari and Warner's, from Midway, Atari again, Midway again, Namco, and Atari again. All through the early years of GCC, they are just being sued left, right, and the other. Ultimately, GCC agrees to transfer the rights to Namco for Miss Pac-Man, except for one or two rights. And that is essentially around the coin operated arcade rights. GCC continued to maintain those rights. But let's fast forward a bit. Let's go into the future. And this is where AtGames enters the scene. AtGames begins contracting and working with Namco to release a line of Namco arcade flashbacks. These are little flash drives you would plug directly into your TV with the wireless controller. And of course, these are sold at everywhere from Dollar Generals to Walgreens to Walmart's, you name it. This little device shows up everywhere. And AtGames has this relationship with Namco, and they are, raking in all this money from licensing Pac-Man. Well, on about midway through 2019, Namco is alerted by an unknown affiliate. And that affiliate tells them, hey, AtGames is out behind your back trying to acquire the license to Miss Pac-Man. At this time, Bandai Namco, is also negotiating with GCC for those very same rights. And because they want to take full ownership, as I mentioned, GCC maintained control of those rights. And it became more important for Namco to get them all bought up so that they could continue proving or producing Miss Pac-Man. At this time, they've of course used Miss Pac-Man in games like Pac-Land. They've released digital versions of Miss Pac-Man in a variety of e-stores and storefronts. Miss Pac-Man is everywhere, and this last little bit is what's hanging on, and they want to be able to use Miss Pac-Man in some future products. So when they contact AtGames and say, "What is the deal? We are negotiating on this. We hear you're negotiating with them trying to buy the rights." And AtGames says, "No, that's not happening. We don't know what you're talking about. Just didn't happen. You're wrong." And that's that. We're not talking to them. We wouldn't go behind your back at all. But oh, by the way, we really would like to license Miss Pac-Man from you and produce some Miss Pac-Man products. Would you be interested in letting us, create a Miss Pac-Man blast, for example? And Namco responds to them and says, we'd be open to the idea. And that's the end of it. That's the end of the conversation that Namco has with AtGames at this time. And so here we're going to take just a brief moment and we're going to catch up in the chat. And, we're going to start here. Gamer Fridge points out that, of course, GCC also was behind Food Fight. Jason also says they created Food Fight. We have Officially Unofficial says, I wonder how much Crazy Auto Full Arcade Machine would sell for today. There's at least one prototype out there. Anyone know if there are more? Gamer Fridge also says they made Junior Pac-Man, which in his opinion is the best Pac-Man. Let's see here. Mike Hawkhurt says, and then PK got his hands on it just as a way to take an upper deck at Namco. Gamer Fridge said they sued over the cartoon as well. And thanks Cornercade for shouting out JHE Plays. If you guys aren't familiar with JHE Plays, go check that out. It is just my channel where I am streaming various gameplays. It's essentially all that is. I wanted a place where I could just fire up and stream gameplay and other playthrough videos, things like that. So if you're not familiar and you haven't checked it out, go check it out. There's a couple VR games out there right now. And KFB says, how do you know all of this stuff? Well, the great thing is with some of these lawsuits, much of the information was unsealed. So there is a lot of sealed stuff that it would be great to get our hands on, but a lot of it was unsealed. So you can actually look through a lot of these documents, look through some of the messages, emails, things like that, especially around the AtGames lawsuit. Much of it is public record. It's well documented out there. And of course, at the time this was all going on, many YouTube channels were also covering the news around AtGames and getting sued by Namco. And so we'll get into that in just a minute. Gamer Fridge says there is a lot of videos on story of Miss Pac-Man. Absolutely. Let's see. Mike says AtGames was paying Namco a lot for licenses, but never would give them permission to use Miss Pac-Man. So PK decided to poop in the punch. And Goofyfoot says, just look up who owns Miss Pac-Man and it reveals all of this poop. And Mike again says, James, your show is even better with a plate of White Castle sliders. I just found out. That's excellent. We don't have White Castles in this town anymore. Wish we did. Pretty funny that they started making out mod boards for Missile Command and Atari briefly pursued a lawsuit but dropped it, instead worked with GCC. Indeed. KFB, thanks for the $1.99 super chat. He says, so you're saying A1 Up Miss Pac-Man XL is Costco bound. uh, well, who knows? But thanks for the $1.99 super chat. And you know who else thanks you? Appreciate that very much. And let's see here. Dr. Torque says, sounds like Arcade One Up needs to get together with GCC. All right. So this is the perfect segue to get back in to our story. Let me, how do I get back into our story? Let's see here. That's not it. There we go. Okay. So to refresh where we're at, right? AtGames is working with Namco. They're producing these little flashback machines. Namco hears from a third-party affiliate. I want an unnamed affiliate. I want you to remember that because we're going to come back to that because I'm pretty sure I know who this unnamed affiliate is. And if you use your brain, you can probably figure it out as well. But we're going to come back to that. And they hear from this affiliate that, hey, AtGames is out there trying to get the license to Miss Pac-Man. PK and AtGames denies it, and that's where our story takes a turn. Not long after, we're literally talking the span of about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, AtGames finally gets in touch with Kevin Curran of GCC. You know, remember, they're negotiating at the time as to who is going, they're negotiating with GCC to acquire the rights to Miss Pac-Man, to get the full royalty rights back. And Kevin Curran confirms to them, yes, we have been in talks. AtGames approached us. We have been in talks, and confirms everything. So needless to say, Namco's pissed. Off the walls pissed. They send a letter to AtGames saying, we know you're doing this. If you do not cease and desist immediately, because we are in the middle of negotiating with them for the same rights, that not only will we sue you, but we will cease working with you on anything, and we will make damn sure you never get a penny from your Miss Pac-Man rights, royalty rights, if you were to acquire them. They said, we will get rid of Miss Pac-Man if you end up getting the rights. Well, it's roughly like a week later, it's announced, it's official. AtGames acquires the rights to Miss Pac-Man from GCC, essentially the royalty rights. They buy all the royalties that are still owed GCC by Namco, and all future royalties of Miss Pac-Man for which GCC held the royalty rights. AtGames pays $10 million for these rights, obviously up front. So immediately, Namco, Bandai Namco at this point, right, sues AtGames. Now, their lawsuit is more around issues relating to their flashback system. It's not directly related to Miss Pac-Man. So they find a reason to sue AtGames over these flashbacks. At the same time, Walgreens sues AtGames again for fraud related to guarantees around these flashback systems that said, whenever you don't sell any of these, we'll go ahead and pay you for the unsold units. And so they sue for like something like 1.5 million unsold units, and the amounts related to that. P Dub says, "Oh boy, James, PK's suck up squad are clipping this like crazy right now. Better watch out." So this is the lawsuit, right? So they file the lawsuit. At the same time, retailers begin contacting Bandai Namco and telling them that AtGames is out shopping Miss Pac-Man products to them, telling those retailers that Miss Pac-Man, that AtGames owns the rights to release Miss Pac-Man products. And of course, one of those you see pictured here, which is the AtGames Legends Compact, Legends Ultimate Compact. I don't know what the full name is, but it's the compact version. And boy, does this remind you of anything. I mean, this sure looks like a 3/4 scale arcade system, right? Almost like AtGames was out there trying to shop a competition to Arcade One Up, who at about this time is steamrolling onto the stage with at Walmart with their Street Fighters, with their Pac-Man, with their Mortal Kombats. And oh boy, right? Here's AtGames out here trying to sell this thing that they don't have the rights to. And what is believed is happening is that AtGames was trying to rush this out as quickly as possible during the lawsuit so that they could get products on the market before Namco could react. Well, we're now in the middle of this lawsuit. And interestingly enough, another company is suddenly granted the rights to Miss Pac-Man. And of course, you know which company we're talking about. We're talking about Arcade One Up, right? So Arcade One Up now releases a line of 3/4 scale Miss Pac-Mans. You've got the countercades, you got the partycades, all secured from Bandai Namco. And well, while we don't know it's a fact because the unknown affiliate is not named, you can't help but wonder that at this time, Arcade One Up is taking off. Arcade One Up already has a relationship with Namco. Arcade One Up is trying to corner the market and take out their competitors. We all know the stuff that Arcade One Up did around that, locking people out of licenses, pulling shenanigans. Well, could that unnamed affiliate that alerted Namco that somebody was trying to acquire the Miss Pac-Man rights out from under them been Arcade One Up? I don't know. Sure seems like it, doesn't it? Don't know that for a fact. It's all conjecture on my part, but man, who else would be interested in that? Now, Namco's able to do this because of a loophole in the royalty rights that AtGames owns that basically says they only own royalties for coin operated arcade machines featuring Miss Pac-Man. Because there's no coin slot, there's no reason or need to pay AtGames royalties. So they're able to go ahead and license this to Arcade One Up. This is likely also the reason that you still see Miss Pac-Man with My Arcade. Again, no coin slot, even though it's the arcade replica. And so between Arcade One Up, My Arcade, that is the source of getting Miss Pac-Man out and around AtGames. But the story's not over. As I remind you, Namco threatens to ensure that AtGames never makes a dime off this $10 million investment. And even though they settle the lawsuit with AtGames for an undisclosed amount, that's exactly what they do. As we move into 2022, Namco begins making drastic changes to their games. In Pac-Land, Miss Pac-Man is erased and replaced by Pac-Mom, removing the iconic bows and replacing it with a pink hat. we start seeing Namco deleting Miss Pac-Man from all the digital distribution stores. Gone is your ability to buy Miss Pac-Man, download it, and play it from all these distribution outlets. Gone to this day. The only things you see officially on the market of Miss Pac-Man are these arcade one-ups, My Arcade. Of course, you can find it on the Pixel Bash as well, but those are actually put out by Namco themselves, so there's some loophole they have there as well. But for the most part, they have deleted and erased Miss Pac-Man from a variety of games, not just Pac-Land. There's Pac World. There's a whole series of other Pac-Man related games that were released on various consoles that have had re-releases since then, in which Miss Pac-Man has been removed and replaced by Pac-Mom. And so, for the most part, in all intents and purposes, when it comes to AtGames, Namco has killed off Miss Pac-Man. And that is the sordid tale of how greed, dishonesty, deception, whatever you want to call it, competition ended Miss Pac-Man. And when I heard this story and started diving into it, I just thought it was so fitting. We've talked about some of the things AtGames has done over the years, some of the things Arcade One Up has done. We've all kind of known the story of Miss Pac-Man and how she came to be, and the fact that AtGames is embroiled in the middle of it, and all through greed, right? They couldn't just leave well enough alone to work with a successful partner in Namco, one that they had developed successful products with and could continue working long into the future with. They put that all in jeopardy to try and snag a $10 million royalty rights that they thought would pay who knows what exponential amount of money they thought that they would make from that. Maybe they thought they could box out Arcade One Up and release Miss Pac-Man themselves, which would likely outsell Pac-Man and other cabinets. Who knows? Was that what was driving the greed and the deception on AtGames' part? But what we do know is it appears to have been a massive backfire, as Namco, who's probably held a grudge about Miss Pac-Man from the very beginning, because it wasn't Namco that came up with the sequel to Pac-Man. It was two guys at MIT. And from that point on, Namco had a distaste in their mouth for Miss Pac-Man, was jealous, was not willing to let that continue. And when AtGames rubbed salt in the wound, they had just had enough. And I just think the story is insane that a home arcade company got in the middle of all of this. And who knows if Arcade One Up was involved, but it sure seems like they might have been. Again, all opinion, not fact, just all opinion about Arcade One Up being involved. They certainly were involved when they got the license, right? But were they the unnamed affiliate of Bandai Namco that told them about AtGames' attempts to acquire the rights to Pac-Man out from under them? Sure seems logical, doesn't it? So let's go and check in with you guys. I know you've been chatting away, and I want to catch up and see what everybody was talking about here. So let's get caught up here. Calvin Wong, thanks for joining us. Says the story is really long. I think I'll just buy my my arcade Miss Pac-Man. There you go. It's a very gray area on what AtGames actually own. It's very complicated. What can and can't be released by Namco without paying a royalty, but AtGames really can't do anything with it on their own. That's exactly right, because Namco still owns the production rights to Miss Pac-Man. So in reality, AtGames can't do anything with it, which is why they were trying so hard to release it before Namco got wind of what they were doing. Because if they could have got a product out, it would have been much harder for Namco to pull that back and to flex their royalty loopholes, right? Um, Meatball Saucy said, I wish I had my Tetris Mini had the Miss Pac-Man art. And of course, Gamer Fridge and others correctly guessed Miss Pac-Man or Arcade One Up as who I believed was doing it. Sergeant, thanks for dropping by. Officially Unofficial says, well, that explains a few things about AtGames and why their company and support is such crap now. They ain't got no money. Well, it's crap except for a couple employees, right? They have some good employees there, despite what Namco does. Namco still makes Miss Pac-Man on the Pixel Bash. Indeed. Jim It KFB says, Jim, I would love to see Miss Pac-Man XL under any company. I couldn't agree more. It is a cab that is desperately and sorely missed in my arcade, and I would love to see it come out. And I wonder if the size is a gray area that maybe violates that royalty, and why we didn't get a Miss Pac-Man XL and instead got the Miss Pac-Man pub table at Costco. Could it be that it's not just the coin, but the size of the cabinet as well that matters? That's an interesting thing to look at. B. Kirby says, AtGames sounds like a shady, shitty company. Well, you know what they say, all is fair in love and business, right? Jason says the Pixel Bash series was created before this mess. Indeed. JJ says, whoa, just joined, but I'm looking at your screen, and if that's true, wowzers. Looks like the machines A1 Up sells at Walmart. That is indeed them. Of course, since then they've released the Class of '81 Deluxe and the special editions. They've had cocktail tables of Miss Pac-Man 40th anniversary versions. And now, we're probably going to get a 45th anniversary edition in those special edition classics coming to Walmart. Thor KC says, TLDR, AtGames don't play, but they know how to play the game. No, not that game, the game. Goofy Foot says, James better take that 4KP offline tonight. Hey, I'm sure this is nothing that AtGames hasn't heard 1,000 times. As I said, this was covered quite extensively, I think, on YouTube channels when this story was actually breaking. I know I've seen stuff from Pat the NES Punk. There are a few other channels I think that covered it at the time. Obviously, the home arcade space, I don't think it was either just getting started and probably not getting into the weeds yet around this kind of thing. But it was very interesting things happening, 7 years ago. Gamer Fridge says they still sell a new version of Pixel Bash. Yeah, they continue to make it. And of course, KFB knew it about Arcade One Up. I guarantee an XL at Costco, and it will be Miss Pac-Man. So obvious. Yeah, I think it'll either be a Miss Pac-Man if they can, or it will be a Pac-Man Special Edition XL because it's sold so well, and there are still a lot of people searching for it in the aftermarket. And if this is the 45th anniversary year, I think you just might see another Pac-Man XL at Costco, this time with some goofy 45th anniversary artwork. And who knows, maybe they'll make it a multicade beyond just the normal PCB and throw on a bunch of other random games from Midway, or who knows, maybe they'll put a trackball on it and another Golden Tee. It says officially unofficial, and that's apparently all they release these days or re-release. Indeed. Yep. Yeah. B. Kirby says we all knew who it was. Yeah, it wasn't hard to guess, right? We know what the shenanigans that were going on at the time. Why do I feel like unnamed affiliate is a weird way to spell it? Moment. Wow, I wonder what was paid for a useless license. Yeah. Yeah, so Jason, at the Chicago Pinball Expo, at least Namco was there selling their Pixel Bashes. When they were produced, I don't know, but obviously they're still, I believe they're still manufacturing them, and you can, I know by me, there's a company that sells them. Obviously, Phil has that big store by him that sells Pixel Bashes. So I believe they are still being produced. I think they have a class of 81 version as well as the Pac-Man version that they're out there selling actively. John J says, "Hey James, everybody just got done with Keys live karaoke. Glad to see you guys." Well, that's interesting. Thanks for dropping by, John J. What about Pac Dad? Well, my assumption is Pac-Man is the Pac Dad. They just killed off Ms. Pac-Man and had him hook up not with his mom, but with some other lady who's now named Pac Mom. MG says, "I like her cowboy hat. She's more Pac MILF." There you go. And it's because Miss Pac-Man became a coke addict. She couldn't stop sniffing the lines and dots. They wanted to distance themselves. That's definitely it. Uh, more Pac sister. Ooh. Uh, an order of 15,000 Miss Pac-Mans at Costco may eventually get this resolved. Indeed. So now you can't blame AtGames for charging you to use OTG on your Pinball 4K. They lost money previously. Yes, they need to make up that $10 million. Bad investments. Sergeant says, "Good evening." Officially, an official says, "Even at AtGames released a Miss Pac-Man cabinet, they would put something behind a paywall and it would be laggy." MG says, "James hates facts." Negative, Ghost Rider. John D is in the mix somewhere. You have to pay $100 to unlock the fruit. Oh my. That's probably true. Oh, KFB gifting 10 James Hates Everything memberships. Well, thank you, my friend. Here is another guy who thanks you. Look at that GRSFU there in the background. Appreciate the gifting of memberships, KFB. And it looks like got a lot of people thanking you as well. Let's see. Namco never 100% owned it and had to share royalties, but were willing to do that for a long time because of how iconic Miss Pac-Man is. I doubt AtGame wants to sit on it without profiting. Yeah. So that Namco had successfully, I believe it was 2008, 2006 or 2008, Namco had successfully negotiated the vast majority of rights from GCC, but they held on to a couple. And of course, those are the ones they thought had the most royalties tied to them, which is the arcades, the coin operated arcades. And that is the rights that AtGames purchased. The last little bit. MG says, "Honestly, I have no idea what we're talking about. I couldn't sleep, so I figured I put James on to hopefully drift off." Ha 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 ha. Does anyone know why it's so hard to get Miss Pac-Man in blue and it's not class of 81? That is a great question, James or Jim. I'm talking to myself, apparently. And it is super frustrating. I would love to either have Miss Pac-Man in an XL or at this point, even in a deluxe in the baby blue. The black one, yeah, it looks cool, but it's not the one I want. It's not the one I want in my arcade. It's an interesting design, and of course, Arcade One Up always falls back on their "oh, that's what retailers wanted" nonsense. You know, it's on you to tell them what customers actually want. Show the data. Customers want the blue one. I mean, shit, you got to have tons of sales of data from Walmart on how many Miss Pac-Mans and Baby Blue you're selling. Mike Hawkert says Pac-Man with time crisis guns. Yes, that very well may be the next the next XL. Multicade at oh Jesus. Don't give them any ideas, Mike. Uh they can continue manufacturing them under original agreements, but they have not produced a new PCB and game selection that's been updated since 2018 that I am aware of. Pack love this one. Pack Mistress and Pack Daddy. There you go. Uh B. Kirby says Miss Pac-Man is better than Pac-Man in my opinion. I never knew this story. That's why I like your channel, James. You always put some great and interesting content out there. Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, to me, Miss Pac-Man is the superior Pac-Man, right? Like when you're talking the original games, like those two original, Miss Pac-Man is a far better game in my opinion. It, of course, it has the story around it, those cut scenes, it plays well, it looks better. I personally like Baby Pac-Man, even though the Pac-Man part of Baby Pac-Man is not great. I love the pinball mix aspect. I'm also a big fan of Super Pac-Man just because I like Superman a lot and I love the idea around that. But it is very cool. Uh, Thor KC says, now we know why they are always hiding the fast mode. Yes, indeed. Miss Pac-Man is a hell of a drug. MG says 10 memberships talk about a wasted investment. Oh, gotta love MG. Ironically, the fast flashbacks can be used with the ALUs to play a licensed Pac-Man on your AtGames arcade. Indeed, it could. Yep. If you can find one, which I'm sure you can, because obviously the drugstores were having to blow those out for pennies on the dollar when they didn't sell. The Fist of Love, thanks for joining us. Says you can pay in installments for a future Miss Pac-Man, but have to pay it all at once. I love it. I love it. Oh yeah, the affordable financing where you pay a small amount now and then get to pay make one big lump sum payment down the road. Oh boy, I love it. Uh, okay. In January 2023 CES, the print materials for Miss Pac-Man Deluxe only credited uh, Bandai Namco for copyright. Indeed, that whole loophole without the coin mech. I think he was faking that laugh. Let's see. Customers want what appeals to them. Uh, the baby blue Miss Pac-Man is by the best looking Miss Pac-Man cab. Agree. I have the blue Miss Pac-Man Partycade upgraded. Nice, Sony. Something baby, something Pac-Man. Do. Oh, love it. They got divorced back in 1988. Yep, and he hooked up. That's his new Pac Mom is his new younger. Does that mean that baby Pac-Man is like his stepkid or is how does that work? It's a split balloon payment. I love it. Uh yep. Let's see here. James, what do you think about the Fast and Furious being restocked everywhere again yesterday? It probably means they still have the rights to it and are producing it in small waves that they can afford to release them. Obviously, we got more shipments. What was it, a month or so ago as well? A small shipment of like, I believe, 500. So they're probably doing some sort of small release cycle that I think obviously they watch the community, they pay attention to what's going on. There's no doubt about it that the mystery encoder hack of Fast and Furious has driven more interest in that cab. The fact that you can add like Crazy Taxi and Daytona and a bunch of games they can't release on it, I'm sure has caught their attention and is why they maybe went back to produce some more. But they are doing it in small batches, from what I understand, so that they don't get caught up too much in that investment. Oh my God, is the Casino Cade actually back in stock too? Because if that's true, that's scary. Um, Thor KC said, I would like a product that was available for 3 easy payments and 1 complicated payment. We can't tell you which payment it is, but one of these payments is going to be hard. Then now that's a marketing strategy I can get behind. KFB says, I feel like no one bought that Miss Pac-Man cocktail from Costco. I think you're right. It stuck around for a really long time. Um, I saw discounts. That's one I think was getting discounted earlier than the Midway Golden Tea, whatever the hell that's called. Thor KC's the mailman. We will get shot. The envelope will not seal. The stamp will be in the wrong denomination. The final payment must be made in wampum. Um, Bobby Broadway says he does not hate Zohar, just doesn't know how to unblock him. He's just kidding around. $600 upfront, $1,300 due in one payment 12 months later. Now that's some affordable financing. The only reason to get Fast and Furious is to do the buy stuff mod on it. That A1 Up machine has that weird ass ROM on it where they basically split the original game into 2 different games. Yeah, it is definitely goofy. Not to be confused with Goofy Foot. It is a goofy rendition, right? They wanted to be able to say it had 2 games when it really only had 1, which was dumb. They should have just said it on. Casino Cade 349. It's not worth $3.49. I couldn't agree more. Buy Stuff Arcade's getting ready to come out with their PC mod for Fast and Furious. Indeed. And I know they've been held up with obviously tariff debates and uh, Chinese New Year shipping issues at the ports, but I think those things are finally starting to flow for them. So if you're one of those that jumped in on the order, look for those coming soon. Uh, Zero says, have you done the 3M mod on your 4K? I have not. Um, Seen lots of people doing that. You're talking about the privacy screen, of course, for those who don't know. He's talking about putting the privacy screen over the back glass to deaden the reflection. I personally, the reflection doesn't really affect me in most of the games. I don't know if it's the angle or what. I can see it there if I really look for it, but for the most part, I don't see it. So it's not one that truly bothers me all that much. I know it does bother a lot of other people, and so it's definitely a good mod. You should be very careful when doing it. Know that you are voiding your warranty, so don't expect AtGames to fix it if you fuck it up. Pardon my French. Um, so do it at your own risk. I would suggest an easier solution rather than the 3M would just be get some like 5% tent and just tenth the plexi. It's far easier to put on. Um, you could probably even go 30% tent rather than 5. It's very easy to put on. You don't have to take everything off to put it on. And it's going to darken your screen up enough that it probably won't reflect. And I'm betting it's a hell of a lot cheaper than buying that 3M stuff for, $100+ You can get a decent, I mean, how big is that back box? 2 feet by 2 feet. I mean, get like a 3 square foot thing of tent. It's probably going to cost you $5, and then all you need is a water bottle and some squeegee, and you can install that, and it'll darken it up. But again, you do those things at your own risk if you really, really want to uh, lower the brightness of that. And if AtGames is listening, perhaps you should just come out with a software update that allows people to dial the brightness back on the back glass, because that then they could do on their own and fix their glare issues without having to void their warranties. Bobby Broadway says, I wish I got that cocktail table. They are one of the best one-ups out there. Gambie says, it's okay. I hate me too. I get it. Uh, Do you see the HP Sprocket photo booth? It's a $600 better version of what Arcade One Up made. Well, quite frankly, I have not seen that. Doesn't surprise me. The one Arcade One Up made is basically a cheapy little phone in there with the cheapy little printer and a giant ass plastic case around it or frame around it. You can definitely get those kinds of faux um, Polaroid cameras for far cheaper, though you pay out the ass for the photo paper itself. You know, but hey, teenage girls gonna love that thing. So there you go. The photo booths or something they, you know, they love. And Danny thinks everybody's asleep, and that's because it's late night, I guess. Says MG says, I don't often block people. When I do, it's 6 out of 7. There you go. Uh yeah. So Todd said GE Force guy, like GE, he brings good things to life. Um Buy stuff arcade is the way. Yeah, they do some great stuff, don't they? Let's see here. Skimming. It's 2 by 2. Why would you buy 3 by 3? Kind of a muppet. So, if it's 2 by 2, you buy 3 by 3 because you overhang each side and then you use an X-Acto to trim to fit, MG. Trim to fit. If you've never installed tent on a car or a window, that's how you do it. You go a little larger, and I doubt you're gonna get something that's like 2 by 2 with 3 extra inches or 6 inches or whatever. I mean, maybe you could, but I don't know the exact measurements either. I don't know if it's 2 by 2. I just pulled that out of my rear end. Obviously, you should measure before buying tent. Officially cool. Eventually, I can see a 4 terabyte PC mod coming. Software updates require a weak server outage to register the changes. Apparently so. I saw today they still haven't fixed the OTG issue people had a month in, which that is unfortunate. I just turned mine on for the first time on Thursday since before that update. I did not take that update. I waited. So I haven't even tried my OTG since then. So I hopefully it still works. It wasn't plugged in at the time, so I believe most people affected by it had theirs plugged in at the time. But there you go. Just wire in a POT and adjust the brightness. You could do that too. I was considering hunting down a cheap Stern, but I may take a chance on Wonderland. Yeah, for guys that don't know, P Dubs is uh, doing an interview with them, I believe Monday with Wonderland. So you should get some hopefully new photos and videos, maybe. So that'll be cool. So definitely tune in to P Dub's channel for that. I know I will be. I'm very interested in what they have to say, especially given some of the feedback, that had came about after the prototype 2.0 gameplay that was sent out. I think the photo booth could have been a great A1 Up product if they only included a photo booth. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're going back to their greatest hits, right? That was something they released years ago that sold like wildfire, so they thought they'd go back to the well for an easy cash grab. I have no idea how well it's sold. It certainly is on sale a lot. Let's see. Guys, I gotta be honest here. We have 63 people watching and only 3 likes. Well, damn it, smash the like button. Is anyone making different skins for Media One Up cabs? Oh, you know they will be. That's gonna be a great cab to mod because it's that HS1 design, which so many games were released on that cab, uh, that were kits and things like that. So a variety of things. And of course, if it's got a Pi 5, it's gonna be easy to drop in your own OS and games on. That cab is gonna be perfect for modding. So there you go. Yep, Monday at 8 Eastern on the P Dubs channel. Always wait for someone else to brick their device before you attempt a software update. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Never be the first out of the gate. If you haven't learned that with Microsoft over the years, hopefully you're learning it with AtGames. I'm definitely in on the Wonderland pinball machine. Me too. And so far, I'm really excited by it. I think they're making a lot of progress, and it's something that I'm very, very interested in. Uh, an interview with Wonderland. I wonder if I care. I'll be watching Multicade Mondays live with P Dubs. Smash the like. Danny says again. Uh, A1 up foosball table next. We did show a prototype of an A1 up uh, air hockey, or not air hockey, but what is it? Table hockey, bubble hockey. God, I couldn't remember. Zero says, get hyped for litigation. I do. I do. uh, let's see here. I'm interested in buying a commercial claw machine. The one up claw machine could be an option once there is a functioning coin door mod. So that's actually a good call out there, Mike. My one up claw machine still works great. My kids still play it, works like a champ, like the day I bought it. Um, I will say I know, was it Buy Stuff was playing with a coin mech mod. I don't know that I was thrilled with their implementation at the time they were testing it. But I haven't seen a follow up since then. So I don't know if they've progressed on that, but they definitely had one that was at least functioning. I personally would like to see them do maybe something a little different if they're going to go that route, because you can buy whole kits, claw machine kits off of like somebody like AliExpress, which comes with a coin mech. It comes with a PCB that works better. Of course, comes with different size claws and their own motors and everything. I would love to see Buy Stuff find a good, reliable one and just sell a kit to replace all the A1 up stuff with a legit one. Because I would love to have, and I've thought about doing this myself, which other people could, uh, one that is truly configurable, right? Like those those kits come with either a PCB that has an LCD screen where you can set the various values, those cost a little more, or they come with the modulator that allows you to adjust the voltages, which crank up the strength of the claw and things like that. I want one that's truly configurable, unlike that weird little switcher on the A1 up. I want one that comes on when it's supposed to come on, music wise, doesn't do the weird blinking lighty thing, like would have a coin mech. I think all those would be great. Um, Fly through here. Thor says, I've always wanted a bubble hockey, not sure why, since I could never find one who wanted to play, and I don't have room for one, but I want one nonetheless. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like my kids are young enough that they'd grow into wanting to do it. And I honestly, that one that ThinkUp did for them that was the Mario characters, that would be really cool to have. Of course, you'd always, who doesn't want the classic like Olympic one either with the Russians and the Americans. I think I'd be interested in a claw machine mod that involves lots of customization options for adding your own music. Yeah, that would be super cool. Who is playing VR tonight? Hopefully, a lot of people. Geo is in the house. Says seeing a Nova Blast in real arcade had me stunned with happiness and concern because the power switch is like super visible in the back, and the cabinet at my arcade is in the center of the arcade. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I personally love the Nova Blast. I think it looks great when you see it and play it in person. It's really cool. It's something I've never really cared too much for candy cabs, but sitting down at it and actually playing, I immediately wanted it. And I had didn't pre-order it, and I understand they're finishing up or have finished up their pre-orders. So their regular stock hopefully should start showing up soon, in which case my hope is to pick one up, but that all depends on when all these other things are coming out, right? You got Glenn's coming out, and I don't want to drop a bunch of money on that one and then turn around and or drop a bunch of money on the Nova Blast and turn around and Glenn's pre-orders go live, things like that. So it's all a wait and see right now. Uh yes, Danny clickbaited with his the 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 iconic arcade was dead, but at the same time he did a solid and gave everybody a link to how you can still pre-order it. Hopefully he contacted somebody over at Iconic Arcade or Media One Up and told them their website was jacked up so that they could fix it. Play mixed reality game, those are better. They are certainly a blast. I love playing the mixed reality stuff on the Quest 3. So cool having that stuff like literally in your room right there. And I can't wait for some of the newer stuff that's coming out as the developers get better and better at the mixed reality stuff. Costco had a commercial grade bubble hockey over the holidays, but just missing the hang down scoreboard. Uh, his arcade is running MVC1 on it because their original MVC2 PCB got fried. That's interesting. When KFB cracks, Zuckerberg will be the only one who saw it coming. Okay. Oh yeah, because it's in the Meta Quest. I got you. Hell yeah, no clickbait, only information. Well, it was kind of a clickbaity title, but you gotta do that, right? For intrigue and get people to want to click on it and view it. So that's the end. We've gone over an hour here. We've talked about how AtGames killed Miss Pac-Man. So I really appreciate everybody for joining and hearing the story. Hopefully it wasn't all rehashed for you and you learned something new on that story. It was new to me. I've said before I haven't been around the three-quarter scale harm arcade community for all that long, maybe a couple years at this point, a little over a couple years. So I missed all that fun stuff. Um, so it was very intriguing to me. And um, so I found it very interesting. Zero, appreciate that. Actually, I am playing with something right now. I may give you some more interesting AI stuff. I won't tip what it is because it's very cool. and and I think once I do it, I think a lot of people might do it. So which is great, but it's I'm still debating whether how I can ethically do it. So if that tells you anything. But it's very, very, very cool. And it works really good. So I'm really excited for it. I don't know how I'll use it. I'm worried that threat actors might use it. In fact, I know they already are, but it's really cool. Anyway, so thanks for joining us tonight. As always, I really appreciate it. I would appreciate you smashing the like button if you didn't already. And if you're coming in on the replay or whatever, leave us a comment below what you think of this story. And of course, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And don't forget, until next time, have fun and jump into the discords. If you're interested in playing walkabout golf, you can do it on the MetaQuest 3. You can do it on the PSVR 2 and whatever else walkabout is on. You got the Arcades Anonymous Discord, you got P-Dub's Discord, you got Brooklyn's Discord, you got Michael B's Discord. People posted in all of them. Hop on and join us. There's people playing every damn night. So till next time, have fun.